public hearing will come to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion?
Here.
Kilby?
Here.
La Liberty?
Here.
Pelletier?
Here.
Pereira?
Here.
Reposo?
Here.
Washington?
Here.
President Kamara.
Here. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit this meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Entertain a motion for public meeting made by Council in seat 7, Council Reposo, second by Council Washington. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All public hearings are now open. Item number 1, Massachusetts Electric Company for new solely owned pole location as follows: Star Street and Eclipse Street, 5 new pole locations. The petitioner is proposing to install the installation of 5 new solely owned poles, 3 new anchors, and 2 push braces beginning approximately 20 feet south from the center line of intersection of Bates Street and Star Street and continuing approximately 350 feet easterly. The purpose of this work is due to a solely owned National Grid pole that is located in the right-of-way adjacent to 0 Star Street and 15 Star Street. The owner of this property plans to build on the lot, eliminating access to existing pole 6. The petition is a result of National Grid's need to reroute overhead wires in accordance with the plan number 30697758 dated January 30th, 2023. Are there any proponents to this public hearing? Are there any opponents to this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2. Pole location and underground conduit. Massachusetts Electric Company for a new solely owned pole location and underground conduit as follows. High Street, 1 new pole location. Install 1 SO pole on High Street, beginning at a point approximately 70 feet north of the center line of the intersection of High Street and Lincoln Avenue, and continuing approximately 85 feet in the south direction. Install underground facilities on High Street and Lincoln Avenue. National Grid to install new solely owned pole location, pole 13, and anchor located on the 75 feet south of existing pole 14 on High Street. The anchor to be installed 10 feet south of the proposed pole 13. From the base of pole 13, National Grid will dig under the roadway approximately 85 feet to existing manhole 2, located in the intersection of High and Lincoln. 2 to 4 inch conduit will be installed in this trench for new secondary cable. The purpose of this work is to convert the loads of the homes on High Street and Lincoln Avenue that are currently fed from the existing underground to the new cables that will be installed from pole 13 to manhole 2, in accordance with plan number 3070434. Are there any proponents to this public hearing?
Mr. President, I believe that the gentleman over there is from National Grid. Maybe he doesn't know that he...
Do you want to come down and explain any of this? No, I can explain. I mean, I think I read pretty much exactly what you said you want to do, but that's fine.
I don't have any.
Just want to point out that there's a condition on this. All roadways will be restored curb to curb through the work area. Okay, go ahead.
Aaron Roy, 1250 Brayton Point Road, Somerset, representing National Grid. High Street, this job, our existing facilities that feed High Street and Rock Street, and as well as Belmont Street, are fed underground from submersible transformers, which are transformers located in manholes, which we're trying to get away from and not install anymore. And these transformers are completely overloaded. We had an issue last summer where one of the transformers, submersible transformers, blew up in one of the manholes because they were completely overloaded. So the purpose of this project is to add a pole on High Street and a pole on Belmont Street, put overhead transformers, and feed underground to the existing manholes to take the load off submersible transformers that are completely overloaded. That's pretty much just like a basic rundown on what the purpose of this project is.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Are there any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents to this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3. Massachusetts Electric Company for a new solely owned pole location and underground conduit as follows. Belmont Street, 1 new pole location, install 1 solely owned pole on Belmont Street, beginning at a point approximately 90 feet north of the center line of the intersection of Belmont Street and Lincoln Avenue, and continuing approximately 105 feet in the south direction. Install underground facilities on Belmont Street and Lincoln Avenue. National Grid to install 1 new solely owned pole and 1 anchor. The proposed pole 2 to be located 35 feet south of existing pole 3, Belmont Street. The anchor to be located 10 feet south of the proposed pole 2. From the base of pole 2, National Grid will dig under the roadway approximately 105 feet to existing electrical manhole 4, located in the intersection of Belmont and Lincoln. 2 to 4-inch conduit will be installed in this trench for the new secondary cable. The purpose of this work is to convert the loads from the homes on Belmont Street and Lincoln Ave that are currently fed from the existing underground to new secondary cables that will be installed from proposed pole 2 to manhole 4. In accordance with Plan 30709434. Condition on this one is all roadway shall be restored curb to curb through the work area. Are there any proponents to this public hearing? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to close the open hearing.
Close the public hearing has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Being 6 o'clock, we'll move right into Finance Committee. City Council Committee on Finance will come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion? Here. Kilby?
Here.
La Liberty? Here. Pelletier?
Here.
Pereira?
Here.
Reposo?
Here.
Washington? Here. President Kamara.
Here. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit this meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. We have one individual who signed up for citizens input time, Ken Pacheco, subject matter, item 19. Mr. Pacheco?
Good evening, councilors.
You have 3
Good
minutes,
evening.
Mr. Pacheco?
I'm sorry?
So you have 3 minutes.
Yes. Happy Valentine's Day. I see everyone wearing red. Article number 19 is a request for a service contract with Amoresco. And the contract will be fully funded through the school department. So what I'm asking tonight is that it's, if possible, to be taken up tonight, because I do have some time constraints that are built around this project, and the sooner I get this contract in the hands of the signatures, I will be able to get the work started. It's a $15 million project that's funded through the ESSA grant on the school department side, and we're ready to start work in 5 of our buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just have one moment. Does anyone have any questions about that item now? Because it's not in finance, we're in citizen time. If you have any questions, I think that Mr. Pacheco will be here to answer them now. Council seat 6, Council
I wouldn't say that I have any questions, but Amoresco has done work for the city before. They're very reputable, and they've done a really good job, so I wouldn't see a problem in them doing work over in the school department side. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Council. Council seat 2, Council Dion.
Hi.
Hi.
The only question I have is, your back being up against the wall, like, right now.
2 years. My back is against the wall with a Cinderella date of September 24, because the ESSA money needs to be expended by then. So the sooner we get started on the work,
Yep. The sooner
the
you
better
can
our
complete the
chances are to hit
project
the
and-
date, and a lot of the equipment that we're going to be purchasing has long lead times. 20 weeks, 40 weeks, 80 weeks, it's really crazy with some of the equipment. So the sooner we get ink on a contract, the faster we can get started.
Okay, that's reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I yield.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Pacheco. I know he didn't sign up for citizen input time, but I'm going to ask the city administrator to come down and explain, just real briefly, some of the changes that are occurring with Route 79, because they're going to take place relatively quick. And he's only going to take three or 4 minutes to explain so the public is well aware of the changes that are going to take place. And, Mr. Can you come down, please, Seth, and just let us know briefly what is going on and what most of the changes are on Route 79?
Good evening. So all of you have a copy of the presentation that was made at the informational meeting that was held on January 18th. I know that some folks were not able to make that. There was a number of people from the city there. So I just wanted to, almost as a public service announcement, make sure that everyone realizes that Route 79 closes essentially forever on February 28th. Davall Street will still be open as essentially the alternate route. So it's the raised portion of that mile-long Route 79 section that will be closed, that will ultimately be demolished and brought to ground level. But Davall Street in both directions, north and south, will remain open through the construction through 2026 when it's projected to be done. So I just wanted to make sure that if there were any questions about that, residents and the council knew that this presentation and a considerable amount of additional information is available on the mass.gov website. If you go to mass.gov and just put in Route 79 or Davall Street, this presentation, as well as a lot of other information about the timeline for the project, will come up and be available. We'll answer really almost any question. I spent a lot of time on it today just to kind of test what sort of questions people might have about this. And it goes through the timeline, it goes through the process. This really started in 2014 when the study was completed, so it's been a long time coming, and will ultimately conclude in 2026. But the key is that 79 closes 2 weeks from now, and I just wanted to make sure people were aware of that.
Now, I just think also it's important to let people know that it begins at the Veterans Memorial Bridge and that U-turn will no longer exist either. Because I think it's just important for people to realize that what that mile means, where it starts, where it ends, and how it's going to affect them. Thank you.
That's right, thank you.
What's that date again, February?
28th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seth. You might as well just stay.
There's also 9 copies of this behind me for members of the public that would like one. It's also available for download on the mass.gov website. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You might as well just stay. Next, item number 2, a resolution with the administration prepare presentation to address the needs of city parks and leagues, including football and baseball fields. Do you want to come down, please? I know we were going to have a joint meeting, but as the representatives didn't have a quorum, but you can still come down, the administration, and any member of the board and the director want to come down as well to discuss the resolution that was proposed by the council.
Mr. President, if I may, while everyone's coming down, we have tonight Chris Pirano, who is our assistant planner. We have 2 members of the park board, Al Oliveira, who is our director of city operations, Nancy Smith, who's director of parks. Each of them is prepared to offer different parts of this, and so I guess at the council's pleasure, we can start however you'd like. Mr. Pirano is prepared to do the 20-minute or so presentation that he did for Councilor Reposo's committee several weeks ago. That goes into investments that have been made in the parks and are intended to be made over the next year. I could have Mr. Oliveira speak on plans that are right now in the midst of being made around strategic plan for the parks and open space, which is essentially the extension of the open space plan that expires in '24, as well as maintenance efforts that he's putting in place along with Ms. Smith, or we could go right to the park board members, whatever your pleasure is. So
Well,
I
I
just
think,
wanted to set that forth.
I think, Counselor Reposo, this is your resolution, correct, Counselor? So do you want, are you satisfied if they, I mean, I don't expect anyone to make a 20-minute presentation at the table, but if you, do you have any questions you want to,
It was actually, I think it was a request of some of my colleagues to have the presentation done. It was done in our subcommittee, but I think for the pleasure of the whole council, they'd like to see exactly what has been invested in, and that's, I think that's gonna lead to a lot of the questions that some of my colleagues may have.
so if I had known, I would have put the presentation up on the screen so everyone in the audience can see it. I don't know. Do you have it that way?
Turn the TVs on.
TV's on? Okay. So should we say maybe turn the TVs on and they're going to turn on, or do we have to tell one of the technicians in the back to come out and turn the TVs on, or does the clerk do it from the table? Perfect. And if the Celtics are playing, we're not going to put it on the Celtics channel. We want to watch the presentation. TVs are on.
Okay, so this presentation, I think, gives a good context into what has been done and what is planned in the parks. So this is based off of a 2015 capital improvement plan that the city engaged Blount Bennett Architects to perform. In their report, they came out with a number of priority items that should have been addressed in our parks. They rated them 1 through 5, with 1 being the most urgent and 5 being less urgent than the others. To date, we've completed about 50% of those items, and we'll go through the different parks and what has been completed and what is scheduled to be completed moving forward. So the first park is Kennedy Park. A number of the projects that have been completed include a retaining wall repair on Bradford Avenue. This was funded through the CPC to the tune of $28,000. We've done some design service and structural repairs to the maintenance building, coming out of the facilities budget for $25,000, and the basketball courts were repaired through a park grant. Some ongoing projects down towards the Bay Street section of Kennedy Park. They're installing new tennis and pickleball courts. So this was in response to the growing, trend of pickleball. This is funded through a multitude of sources, including a park grant, CDA funding, and our operating budget. Total cost is $565,000. There is also an ongoing design contract funded through ARPA. We estimate the report to be done in July of this year. The intent is to do a feasibility and design of a new splash pad, that former pool building, evaluations for upgrades and repairs to the existing gazebo and overlook. Again, looking at the park office, new walkways, a multi-purpose sport field, and electrical work throughout the park to support different community events. And construction of any of these projects would potentially be funded through ARPA. Additionally, we are in design for the Kennedy Park Overlook, funded again through CPC, about $183,000. The most recent update we have from the designers is that they have finished the surveying work and are coming up with some different schematic designs. This is the part off of Club Street. Paul Poulos Memorial Park underwent a complete rebuild in October of 2020. This was through CDA funding of $291,000. The Kathy Assad Tot Lot also went under a complete remake through park grant funding and CDA, total cost of $560,000. Damaris Playground received CDA funding in the fall of 2021. About $280,000 was spent there to upgrade the park equipment, walkways, and fencing. Abbott Court is funded to receive a new skate park costing $345,000, and CDA is planning to install a new playground sometime in 2024. Columbus Park received CDA funding to place some park benches, signage, and new playground equipment. About $126,000 will be spent at Columbus Park by 2024. Lafayette Park
There is $1.5 million of funding to rehab the skate park, and we have, as a city, submitted an application to the Massachusetts Land and Water Conservation Fund to redo pathways, benches, lighting, and the basketball court. And we are also working on a Greening the Gateway Communities grant that would allow us to plant new trees in the park as well. Griffin Park saw some upgrades in 2018, about $75,000 for a new play set and the sport courts here. North Park in 2016, an inclusion playground was installed, costing $527,000. A grant was secured through the state, and then CDA funding provided the necessary match. Grandstands were removed through CPC funding. Ice rink repairs were made by through an earmark from Representative Fiola. And we also did some tree planting and vista pruning through that same grant from Representative Fiola. The sidewalks on President Ave and Highland Ave were repaired, and the comfort station was demolished. Upcoming projects include a $2.25 million skate park by August of 2024. Maplewood Park, through a donation from from Robert Kraft and the New England Patriots, purchased new play equipment, and the park drive was repaved in 2021 as part of Stafford road repairs. Maplewood has also received CPC funding of almost $500,000 to upgrade the ball field lighting. Chew Park was funded through CDA for new backstop fencing, benches, dugouts, and rehabbed bleachers. Father Kelly softball field also received CPC funding this year. They're in the design phase to replace and upgrade their lighting, costing about $400,000. Ruggles Park, 2016, $31,000 investment was made for a new basketball court and equipment. The Junta Tot Lot also went through a rebuild through CDA of $127,000. The fitness center is not going to Bicentennial Park any longer. Sorry for not correcting this. It's going to Britland Park. That is ARPA funding of $165,000, expected to be completed in June of 2023. Bicentennial Court is also having some repairs done to the tennis court lighting through the Parks Department budget. There were some projects that tackled the same type of features across multiple parks. So in 2016, Kennedy, Ruggles, Maplewood, Abbott Court, and North Park had their basketball courts redone, again through a combination of park grants and CDA funding, totaling $378,000. Ball field renovations were made in 2017 to Maplewood, Kennedy, and Abbott Court, again a park grant and CDA funding. Pathway improvements were made at Ruggles and Father Kelly in 2019, costing $273,000, again another grant and CDA funding. Tree plantings have occurred in 2021 and 2022 at Pulaski, Turner, North Park, Eastern Ave, and Lafayette Park, coming from the Greening the Gateway Communities Grant, our tree division operating budget, and an earmark from Representative Fiola. Spray pads were installed in 2018 at Pulaski and Chew Park, costing $310,000, again, park funding and CDA grants. Cemeteries have also seen some work. CPC funded gatehouse restoration. Oak Grove had the gates fixed as well, $1 million expansion, and some columbariums. Other open spaces, the city pier was developed and opened through RDA and the city. Family Picnic Grove received some CDA funding for the new picnic tables and signage, and received a lot of community support and volunteerism to complete. Bowenville Green received $20,000 in CDA funding for some landscaping and benches as well. Jerry Lawton Plaza is in the design phase. We're at about 90% construction documents, costing about $300,000 for the design and construction, funded through ARPA, and it's expected to be completed by July of this year. We're doing some aggressive tree planting and stump removal funded through ARPA. All the stumps should be removed. We're planting about 300 trees, and we are piloting a front yard tree planting program in resident and business properties. The Al Lima Quikasham River Rail Trail is receiving significant investment. Phase 4, costing $4 million, is funded through ARPA. Will provide additional connections to Britland Park and Father Travassos. And we're also doing the Westport Rail extension through a Mass Trails and CPC funding. To summarize, from 2020 to 2022, the city has spent about $3 million to upgrade its parks. We have an additional funding of almost $8 million scheduled to be completed, and we are projecting another $4.2 million to be spent in the next year or so on other projects. And this just shows you quickly, visually, the parks that have been invested in, are currently being invested in, and those that are planned for some investments.
Thank you. Council seat 8, Council Washington.
First of all, this is excellent. Thank you for this outline. The city pier, I have a question on the city pier. What are they doing with that? It's an open space. Are there plans to put vendors down there? It's just open area right now. It's great. It's beautiful. Are they going to tie boats up to it? It's just like this beautiful area. What are we going to do with it?
So there's a lot of plans that are kind of in the offing right now with the city pier. A lot of conversations about in the summer events, whether it's concerts, other public events, food trucks, that sort of thing. And those things are coming together, still kind of in the planning. But there's a number of similar type events being talked about in cooperation with local businesses. I know the Narrows is in conversation, but at this point, nothing is certain. There's also docks that are in the planning process, and installation would be coming spring and summer in order for boats to be able to pull up. So even though the city pier appears in some advanced stage of completion with the lights and the grass, and it looks beautiful, there's a lot more to be done in terms of looking at utilization, making sure that we have a plan not just to use it, but to maintain it, and to make sure that it stays in beautiful condition and people can enjoy it and use it, both from the water and from the land. And then, of course, with Dave All and 79 happening nearby, there's a question of access, and we're looking at that as well. So I think you'll hear probably in the next probably 6 weeks more information about how City Pier is going to be used in the near term, and also looking for input on how it might be used going forward.
So I'm glad to hear that it's just not going to be a plot of land, and you're forward thinking on that. I would recommend, and maybe you have, the New Bedford City Pier, they're doing an amazing job down there. I know Mr. Alju are in the New Bedford area, so you're pretty familiar with them. But their City Pier is, I think they're updating it again. They have, the clam shacks down there, and I think our City Pier is more beautiful. So maybe we can get some recommendation from them on what they did. But I'm glad to hear that you're moving forward and thinking outside the box and bigger. So with that, I yield. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor. Council seat 6, Council Pereira.
Is the city pier under the park department? No. City pier is not. Okay. When we talked about parks, I thought maybe they had transferred it from redevelopment to the parks. I think Nancy's got enough parks. Additional parks have been built, Poulos Park and some others that have been cleaned up. But I think we need to look at that the way that they did those parks was through community development money or through grants. So you can't have the same number of people working for the park department and expect them to maintain everything that everybody else has put up money for. So I think that is something that the administration should look at when preparing the next budget. The question I have is, I know people who play softball. Brian Bishop, who does a lot with the city, big softball advocate. He goes away to different communities because they have traveling teams. We don't have a decent softball field here where we can be part of that traveling team, where people can come here, stay here, eat our food, shop here. That's economic development. Volleyball, cheap sport, all you need is one ball, gets kids out, gets kids healthy. But I was at a park board meeting, and some of the volleyball nets that were put up by people weren't put up appropriately and they were taken down. But obviously, if people want to play volleyball, then why don't we look at some parks that we can put some volleyball nets? A lot of people, Fall River years ago was very much known for its soccer. And there is a lot of groups in the city that play soccer. How many soccer fields do we have? And what are the fields that we have that are empty, that are not being used? And then you look at football. I mean, we have the Falcons that have played, and they were playing, I believe, down at Henry Lord. I think that's where they were playing last. But then you have the Titan football team. That's a semi-professional team right here in the city, and they have taken kids out of gangs. You can't play if you're wearing colors. They have helped kids. Where is their football field? Where can they play? You know, the one soccer field at Britland Park, people were there and they said, oh no, this is private, we're the only ones that can use this and it's locked, and can't be that way. If we need another soccer field, then let's do that. But to me, the purpose of a park department is to look at outdoor recreational activity for the community. So those are 4 things that I would encourage the park department to look at: volleyball, softball, soccer, football. Get some of those fields up and running. Maybe some can be dual-purpose fields, but you need to have those. And I know that there's a lot of people that kids used to play in a lot of the Little Leagues. I think the Little League market is over at Maplewood. A lot of people, you know, kids aren't playing Little League because you can't get coaches. You don't have the coaches to get these kids involved, or the cost to families, what have you. I wish that we had more kids involved in youth sports, but if you can't get the coaches, you can't have that. But those are my concerns, that if we had things like that, I mean, my granddaughters were on a traveling basketball team, and boy, when I went to Danvers and saw the setup they had there, indoors with everything, several communities, why can't we have that here? I mean, I like that we're fixing up playgrounds, but we've got to do more than that, and I don't know how to impress upon people to do that. But when I sit at a park board meeting and hear that volleyball nets were taken down because they weren't put up right, but that's just a signal, like, ooh, people like to play volleyball if we've had 2 volleyball nets somewhere. So what do we do to address that? That was my purpose of having the park board, wanting the park board to come before us. What can we do here to help the park board to get money to do those kinds of things? Because those things, especially traveling teams, that brings in money. That brings in money. People come to the city. I mean, there were many trophies at the academic club for soccer. Britland Park was first named after someone who was an avid soccer player. Fall River was known for that. And there are traveling teams. You got all that land down by the picnic area that the water department knows, all that open land, plenty of parking, nobody's down there, you can make noise. Utilize it. How many parks do you have that aren't doing anything now anymore? I know Lower Kennedy isn't doing it. What other parks? Do you know?
If I may, Counselor? So Mr. Olivera and Ms. Smith actually are very prepared to talk about both usage and planning for maintenance. So if we can turn it over to them, I think they could actually answer everything you've raised to this point.
Yeah, I'd like to know how many parks aren't being utilized and what we can do to get them utilized.
Thank you.
Sure. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Counselor.
So in regard to utilization, that's cyclical. So right now, the Board of Park Commissioners is accepting requests for the playing fields for this season. So what we will do is once we receive those, we usually give a deadline of March 1st. We sometimes extend that another week or 2 if we need additional information. What we will do is we'll compile that information and see what type of leagues are now still getting the groups in. We've also discussed with Mr. Olivera a different way to perhaps allot the fields, because when you say an underutilized field, the leagues request these fields in blocks of time, and we can't duplicate those blocks of time. I think I've said this at a previous meeting. We can't duplicate those blocks of time. So we've now requested that the leagues provide us game times, practice times separate, so that we can better utilize the timing to accommodate more groups, as you said, with the especially with the soccer and the football. To say which fields are not utilized, that's a slippery slope, because right now we have many schools that are looking to utilize our fields because there's construction going to be going on at Diamond, and there is construction at Durfee, and those groups come to us to utilize our fields. Once I receive this information, I would be able to give you a better picture of what parks will not or won't see as much activity. That would probably be the best thing.
Just a point of clarification, is there a fee to use the fields?
There is absolutely no fee.
Is there a limit as to how much time one league can take?
We do not.
Thank you.
I don't believe it's
Council,
even
you
whether...
yield. Do you want to talk again? Council
Yeah.
says, Council Pereira.
I don't even know if it's like there's some, I'm on Meridian Street, there's one field there, but basically Meridian Street only uses that area. But if people are coming in and they want to play, how many of those are from Fall River? You know,
We do ask for rosters with names and address of
I think
players.
that's important to ask, because...
We do. We have collected rosters.
And other places, you can go and the fee is nominal, just like we have a very nominal fee here. But I think it's great that you're looking at, you know, what are the times that people are going to use so that other people know and can use it. You just come in and say, we're having this all day Saturday, and that leaves other people out. I'm particularly more concerned with the football field and the soccer. Well, and I am concerned with all four of them, because I've gotten calls from, you know, it's like if you have a volleyball net up, anybody can go at any time. You might go and there may be other people there that you can get into a scrimmage with or what have you, like just to go. The kid at the gas station where I gas up, him and his friends all like to play soccer. Where do we go to play soccer? Like, it's not like a team. It's just like if we want to do this on a Thursday night or a Wednesday night, or where are the fields to go to? If all the fields are tied up, there's none that are just like open for first come, first serve kind of thing? Or we don't have enough for that?
Well, we do. I'm not going to say we do. Basically, what we're looking to do is exactly that. And the other thing that we've discussed is possibly making premier fields, or fields that there are charges for, so that there are open fields. So we have had multiple conversations lately with the administration, with Mr. Oliveira, as to what can we do to better utilize what we have within the constraints that we have to use them. We have multiple, like you said, soccer, youth leagues, adult leagues, football leagues. I have reached out to a contractor regarding the Travasos Park area. We do have to consider the neighbors in that area as to the times that they can be used. So there are constraints as to times that they can be used, and I'm waiting for a price back from the contractors to see what exactly is going to be necessary. And with that, I will input that into my
I know
upcoming budget.
behind Britland Park, where we have the AstroTurf
Yes.
League, behind that, there's another big area. I don't know what that was before, if that was
That was
another-
proposed as just a practice area where it didn't need to be a full-scale soccer area. It was so that teams could warm up behind that area, youth teams could play there. So it's always been a proposed practice.
So people could use that whenever,
Yes.
in that one there. I like the idea of premier fields, because if you have some premier fields that are really going to be taken care of, those are the fields that after you can have traveling teams go to those fields, and that would bring revenue into the city, quite honestly. How long do you think you're going to take? I know that we're, in February now, and summertime, springtime's coming. How long, Mr. Oliveri, do you think that these plans will be to figure this all out?
You're 100% right, Counselor. One of the main things that we want to focus on is making sure that we identify the locations of the fields that we want to make the premier fields. Premier Fields is going to be a great asset to the city. Folks can come on in and, just like you mentioned, economic development. You bring in different groups, but there's a cost to that. So we have to determine which fields we're going to select, and from that point on, we'll have a better idea. the key component, as well as everything else, is, as the council has mentioned before, having the locations to play and maintaining those are a key asset. So that's some of the things that I'll be focused on as well. Fixing the issues right away within a reasonable time before, so everyone else can start playing and getting back to normalcy.
Mr. Akins, is opera money available to help out with some of these premier fields? I know that there is an outdoor component to opera.
So I think that, given the amount of ARPA money that's already been committed to the parks, we'd have to take a look at what our plan is going forward. You know, there may be some infrastructure needs that we need to deal with first. Lewiston Street comes to mind. But I certainly think that there is ARPA money available. The Premier Field could be a revenue generator, and Premier Fields for different sports could be an outstanding thing. Before we, I think, nail that down, coming up with a plan is probably the essential thing, a plan both to identify those fields, to prioritize where we're going to do work first, what work is critically important, needs to be done now, how we're going to budget that, and then most importantly, how we're going to maintain the work we've already done into the future, so we're not just tearing things out and rebuilding it, as some people complain that we've done in the past. Somebody said to me earlier today that CDA money can't be used to repair, can only be used to replace, and that's unfortunate. But regardless of where that money is coming from, and not wanting always to rely on CDA money, we need to become better at maintenance. So there's a lot of moving parts to the question you just asked. I would say yes, there is ARPA money available for the Premier Fields, but I think the ARPA money also might need to be available for other things, like the planning, like the extension of the open space plan, prioritization of some of these maintenance needs, maintenance contracts that would actually help us maintain some of the things that are more specialty items that we don't necessarily have the expertise in-house to do. And I think Mr. Oliveira can actually speak a little bit more to that, if that's okay.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that we talked about is the maintenance, right? We have a plan right away to start initiating the inspection of all the playgrounds for our children's safety. Once we pull that out, we'll put that out to bid as an IFB. That'll be going out very shortly. And we'll have a vendor to do an inspection, and then we'll have a vendor at the same time making sure that all the swings, all the slides, everything is repaired expeditiously. Hopefully, we can get a lot of the warranty items corrected with any of the equipment right away. But the plan is going into effect. I've asked Nancy to carry the funds in her budget for that, and we're excited about that. It is a proven plan. I initiated that in New Bedford schools shortly, a few months ago, and it's doing wonders at this point.
I wish that was initiated before, because what they put up in Father Travasso's Park, that gated area, that skate rink or whatever, doesn't even meet the end. The mat doesn't even meet the end of where the walls are. So why wasn't that ever taken care of? Those things like that really get me. You know, for Mr. Akins, when you say that, you know, a Premier Parks could be a generator. No, they will be a generator. And sometimes I just get frustrated with how long it takes to get something done. We'll talk about, well, we're going to do this and this and this and this, and before you know it, the summer's going to come and go, and we're going to be here next year saying, well, we're going to do this, and things just take longer than, I'm the kind of person said and done, let's go, move, do it, get it done. So I'd like to have you come back, you know, in a couple of months and tell us where you're at with some of these fields and what you're going to do, because I think it is a money generator. I think a lot of the APA money that's being used, where's the return on our investment in the APA money? Something like this, we're going to get return on the APA dollars that we spend, because you're going to have people pay to play and come into the city and stay here and eat here and shop here while they're here for the weekend for this event. They're going to generate income. So that's what I'd like to see with a lot of this APA money. Some of that, frankly, I don't see as getting a return on our investment. But I'm not on that committee, so with that, I've vented enough, and I yield, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Council C4, Council Liberty.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Mrs. Smith, do we have enough space for everybody that puts in requests for park usage, all the different leagues?
Usually we have to turn soccer away because everyone wants to go to Britland Park.
Okay. And what's the alternate to Britland Park?
Well, we have put leagues, we've put the Titans, we've put another football league, another soccer league at Travassos. They've used Travassos in the past, but it's for practice, it's not games.
So when they need space for games, what do they do?
They usually either have to reschedule or play away games.
Okay. So I know that some of the gentlemen from the Titans are here, and they were at our last meeting. I don't know if they've ever been in front of the park board. I've heard that they haven't, and they haven't, but has there been a request for space, or is there space for them?
They have for the last 2 years used Travassos Park.
Okay.
For their practice.
Just
with
for
lights.
practice, but we don't have a spot for games for them.
They've never really requested games from us.
Okay. Is that space available for games?
I don't believe Travassos, I don't know if it's not lined or marked. That's something that we did discuss. As I said, I've spoken with a contractor.
That was my other
To see if
question.
those can be up and running.
What exactly were you asking for the contractor to do at Travassos?
I asked for him to determine whether it had enough space for an additional soccer field, because of the measurements for a soccer field are wider, or if not a soccer field, if there was a possibility of becoming a football field. When they did Travassos, they reconfigured that back area, so some of what was grass is no longer grass, so it narrowed the field area. So that's what I have a contractor looking at right now.
Do you know when you're going to have those answers?
I did speak to him a couple of weeks ago. I can reach out again, so probably within the next, I would hope within the next month or so. So if it's something that we want to move forward with, or at least try to move that forward in this fiscal year, I can bring that back to the council once I get that information from him.
Okay.
It's going to be a ballpark, of course, because that would have to go out for bid.
And then just a question about the volleyball nets. Were those the volleyball nets at Maplewood, where they play? It's my counselor in seat 6.
They have been at Maplewood. They've been at Pulaski as well.
And they put them up themselves. I know they're there all the time playing on the weekend, so did we take those down?
We took them down because they were being erected in a very dangerous way.
So is there a way for the city to put up volleyball nets, or something that they can attach their nets to?
We have spoken about volleyball areas, proposed volleyball areas as well. So that's, again, something that we're looking to see if we can accommodate that in this spring or summer season. But that's something that, again, we were asked to discuss what we were able to do, and I brought those items forward to the administration to see just what we're able to do now and down the road.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor C3, Counselor Kilby?
Yes. Just to piggyback some of the questions and answers tonight, the main one that jumps in my head is similar to what Councilor Pereira said in terms of bringing up the Meridian Street Park. Could you honestly tell me if it is used at all, and for what reasons?
Davis, are we talking about Davis, the one that you have to go up
right off
in the
Meridian
back?
Street, yes.
And
I'll go over my experiences with that park after you answer.
No, we do not permit out that park because of the proximity to all the backyards of the neighborhood. And we were asked, we used to have people incorporated or supervised youth groups go there. We have not had a permit there.
So
no.
there's probably, on the Watuppa side, it's woods. Then you have the pathway that goes up with a basketball court, which potentially could be used for parking. And then you have, I can't tell you how many acres, you've been there more than I have, I think, how many acres going all the way down, almost near the curve at Old Meridian Street. So
presently there's an old playground,
ample
yes.
space to utilize that. And if you're telling me that soccer is turned away, over the years, I can't tell you how many requests I've received for not only soccer, but Pop Warner football practices, youth soccer. When the new North End Elementary School's built, it was, I'll use the word ridiculous in terms of not in my backyard. You know, I was getting almost death threats like I was escaped from the House of Correction. You know, I walk up there and I feel like German Shepherd's going to be let out of the yard, and there are people on their deck swearing at me. So I get it, not in my backyard, but there are not that many homes that border that park all the way down.
So-
Maybe 8 to 10,
So,
and it's
so
all
are you,
fenced.
Counselor, asking me to look
I'm a-
into permitting
I'm
out
asking you, yeah, I'm being a
Meridian
little
Street?
long-winded, but it's frustrated in terms of over the years, when I see nice, pristine, open space that could be utilized when we're, obviously, you're telling me people being turned away for recreational.
They've never requested Davis, though. I've never had a request for Davis Park that we've turned away.
I
For
thought
any-
you told me there's a protocol or a rule in place where
Well-
so it's not being used. We're cutting the grass.
But
we're
we haven't
maintaining
gotten
it.
a request
So
for
it's
it.
an extension of individuals' backyards. And when, it's an extension of private property to public property, and the rank and file of the citizens can't use it. So,
I have no problem. If this council is telling me to look into that property to see if that's something that can be done there, I have no problem to look into that property.
we'll
I
bring a
will say
shield
that
and
you
a
will
helmet,
get complaints.
because you might get rocks thrown at you from some of the neighbors.
Well, you're asking me
Well, so
Yeah.
Counselor, just to be
But
clear,
it just makes total sense.
just to be clear, the park is open to the public. But when Ms. Smith says she's not permitting it, not permitting, but permit, like, you know.
Well, if it's not,
Same spell.
with all
So-
due respect,
No.
if it's open to the public, yes, but it can't be used for permanent purposes for organizations to utilize, so really it's not.
No, understood. But I would respectfully disagree that if people aren't asking, if leagues aren't asking to use the park, is it possible that over time, they just got used to not? And so if we were to say, hey, you know, this could be used, and we publicize that, I think that's a different story than the narrative that we're prohibiting use.
Okay, so-
At this point, it doesn't sound like we are, but I think we can certainly try to encourage use.
Well, could we,
Rocks and all.
could we in this season? So you said the application process is still going on, and that is not, that space is not even open to any discussion with regard to groups using that space. So is it too late to include that on the list? And I don't think it really has much work up there for, I mean, soccer, you need gosh, you could probably put, for
Football.
youth soccer, you could probably put
Football.
at least 4 or 5, 4 fields in there, easy. I know I'm gonna get static, you know, this, I do pretty well in 9A, as Councilor Kamara does, President Kamara does, but hey, what's right is right.
If this
what's right is
council is
right.
asking me to look into that area to see what can be done there,
Okay,
I'll be
please do.
more than happy to do that.
I'll follow up with you, okay? And finally, I guess it's a little aggravating to me because I just remember many years ago when the North End Elementary, the Sylvia School was built, how much static that many of us received, and look how it's turned out. It's turned out wonderful. Even I had one, I'm talking to a chair, I had one neighbor say, if a soccer ball comes in my yard, I'm keeping it. Okay? But, I mean, look at it. It's wonderful.
As I
That's
said, we
wonderful.
have not had a request. I think, as Mr.
Okay.
Aiken said,
So-
people have just gotten used to it over the years because of just the controversy that had gone along with it in the neighborhood. But if you're looking for me to do that,
I am
Counselor,
definitely-
I will be
as
more than
one
happy.
counselor, I think it should be open to,
It's open
be
to the
enjoyed
public. If
by
someone
organizations.
requests it as a permit, the Board of Park Commissioners is here. They will entertain it as a permit, if that's what you're asking.
and
Mr.
with
Chair.
restricted hours, obviously. Weekends, I mean.
Mr. President, point of
Okay.
clarification. Has a study ever been done on Davis Park? At all?
How many acres, please, Nancy?
Or 4 minimum. I mean, it looks like more, but it's encroached upon. A lot of it is encroached upon, and it does have some obstacles there.
I don't
Rocks,
want, I don't
stones.
want you to think I'm being
That would have to be removed if we're going to
confrontational
turn
there,
it into a
but
playing
it's
field.
just, I think it's an important piece that's not being used at all. And there's individuals there, like I said, who think that it's an extension of their property, when it's not. I yield, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Nancy, I just want to make one thing clear. I don't think the council is going to tell you exactly where to go. I think that's your job and everyone else at the table's job to find out and let us know what the availability is in these other parks that, such as Council Kilby and there's other parks, that there's a possibility where people could go to. So if you're turning people away from one park, maybe you can recommend them to use another park.
We do, we
Okay.
do. And that's something that we have, in particular, the Davis Park, we've stayed away from for
Okay.
whatever reasons. But we do refer them to other locations,
Okay.
but there's only so much that we can refer to.
Council seat 3, Council Kilby, do you yield, Councilor?
Yes, I do, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Council seat 1, Council Kadim.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just, I guess, a statement and then a question to the administration. So as I had mentioned I've mentioned this several times during budget meetings and then also through our subcommittee, the presentation which was put forth by Mr. Pirano, which was excellent presentation. The very last slide indicates how much money has been spent on improvements, which I think is important to get out there to the residents and to the public to know just how much of an investment is being made to our parks. Absolutely great. Close to $8 million funded improvements, $3 million spent, and then projected $4.2 million. But my concern, again, is the budget, as I always mention every budget year. So when we look at everything that we have, and I've gone through the open space and recreation plan, which is set to expire in 2024, and then this large document, which I think is the Parks and Cemeteries Capital Improvement Plan that was put together by BBA in 2015, which is a little outdated. We have 165 acres, 33 parks. When we look at the total budgeted just expenses for parks and recs, we have $519,000 set aside for expenses. 48% of that, $519,000, is just for a CSO water charge, right? So we've got to take roughly 50% right off the top. So when you start to do that, plus some heat and electric costs, that really doesn't go towards the maintenance of our parks. We're looking at $155,000 that are set aside to maintain 165 acres and 33 parks. So I've maintained for a very long time that we need to see increased budget in that. Part of the presentation, we're seeing that there's additional space that's coming online, which is great again. But with that, what we're not seeing as a legislative body is a request for additional funding to maintain the field. So let's just talk about the boardwalk. Let's talk about the Kennedy Park overlook. There's costs associated with trying to maintain this. So man hours, maintenance costs, as well as improvements. So first question, I think I heard Al, Mr. Oliveira, I apologize, state that we're going to start to see an increase in the budget because FY22 we had an expense budget of $479. Add all these improvements, FY23, $519,000 for expenses. Again, 50% is set aside just for stormwater charges. So are we going to see more of an increase for the expense budget for FY24 to cover all these, I guess, investments, which, by the way, all this investment is not really any city money, right? So we're looking at all these grants, so park, APA money. So we haven't really invested. Granted, they're all taxpayer money, but we haven't actually invested city money into these parks. So we've been the beneficiary of going out, being very aggressive with grants. At some point, though, I would assume, our potential runs out to go back to the well to get grants to try to repair this. And I just, one only needs to look at Britland Park, which I had mentioned before. I think Mr. Oliveira was here during that time when that project was going on for the turf field. So that's over 10 years. So the turf fields typically last about 10 years before you have to replace the actual top layer of the field. We haven't had any discussion about that. The use for soccer is great there. So my concern, and I guess the reason for this, is really just to start having that initial conversation about how much money are we going to start to see for an increase in the expense budget to cover all this investment that we're putting forth. So that's, I guess, the first question before I get into the second question about the plan and use for fields.
Do you want to answer this? Want me to answer it?
So the administration has reviewed the parks budget. We have identified some areas that we need to add to the budget, one being the equipment for the playgrounds. The other is some asphalt work that needs to happen, some basketball upgrades. So we are in the process of upgrading some of the items that you're referring to. We don't have numbers right now. That's what we're in the middle of.
Okay.
Of putting
So
those
just as one counselor, I'd like to see if we can, and I know we're not going to get a plan that's going to get fully funded in the first year, but if we get a 5-year plan that speaks to man hours, just on how many man hours it would require to, I mean, just Kennedy Park Overlook, right? So if you're going to have grass, if you're going to have maintenance, things like that, you know, I would think that you would need at least one individual to maintain that on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, right? So given the staffing level, trying to figure out from a man-hour standpoint, what's the ideal, I guess, FTEs to have for the department versus where we really stack up, and what can we afford and what's sustainable, right? So I don't want to add on staff just to lay off in other departments or even to lay off in the Parks Department later on. So it's got to be sustainable from my standpoint. But I think we need to know that when we're putting either CPC money in, we're accepting grants. As we accept this money, we need to recognize that there's a cost associated with this, and I want to make sure that we're starting to plan for that, because we've been very good of taking this money and ignoring the part that there is required maintenance, you know, moving forward. So that's the big component that I'm looking for.
So I think the tentative plan right now is that you're going to see for FY '24 some increases. Those increases really represent two things. One is a recognition that there is more park facilities that just need to be covered, but the more concrete use is the immediate critical needs. And whether that's, there's parking lots and pavement and paths throughout the parks that are in terrible disrepair that just really represent a hazard. They look terrible, they are terrible, and need to be repaired immediately. There's basketball courts, there's things where the need is undeniable and immediate, and that would be an FY '24 expense. I think you're going to see the more significant increase in FY '25, and the reason why it would happen then is by that time we'll have had the opportunity to extend the park and open space plan. Right now we're preparing to go out to bid on that. And, you know, that could be as much as a $250,000 investment to actually do a comprehensive plan. But that plan, and part of the criteria we're going to put in that RFQ is going to be maintenance and manpower projections. So I think in '25, you're actually going to see a very deliberate and sort of much more intentional approach to maintenance and manpower than we've done in the past, because it's going to be directed by the plan that we hope to have done in FY '24.
Yep.
That's the idea.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I can live with that, because I think we need a plan, and I granted the, you know, the open space and recreation plan, which was done in 2017, and again set to expire in 2024. Seems like a canned report, and I'm not trying to, you know, ding anybody in terms of the effort that was put into it. I think some of the goals are just lacking. I mean, it's to improve our parks when you start looking at urban facilities. I mean, they were very specific in terms of goals and objectives and action items for open space, but they didn't really necessarily identify the true action items that needed to be actually executed for, you know, the parks and recreational facilities. So if we can do that, and I think at that point, usually there's citizen input or public input that's involved, so hopefully all the recreational teams and organizations will have an opportunity to put forth what their desire and their demand is for the sport, so that we can identify and actually start to build a plan moving forward. So I can support that. The other piece, though, is the capital improvement items, and maybe this does fall more in line with the open space and recreation plan. But when I look at the plan, it has the park amenities, and I know you don't have a copy in front of you, but on page 5, it lists the parks and playgrounds, and then across it will say the amenities and I guess how many facilities are located at that particular park. So what I've noticed, it goes to baseball fields, basketball courts, Little League field, playground, skate park, soccer fields, softball fields, spray park, so I'm assuming that's splash pads, tennis courts, and then deck hockey. I guess, and this kind of really falls in line with what the resolution is, to talk about how do we improve, you know, park and rec facilities for leagues, not just baseball, soccer, but football, flag football, ultimate frisbee, whatever it is. Have we started to look at what amenities are needed for each park so that we can kind of diversify the use of the parks? Councilor in C3 brings up a good point. With Davis Park, I think part of the problem is a good portion of the community probably doesn't even realize Davis Park is there, right? Because it's so far up north.
Mm-hmm.
So,
a lot of people know it's
right. Well, I think there's a lot of people that might know that, but I'll tell you that some people from the south end will, if you tell them Davis Park, they will have no idea what Davis Park is, right? Nor how to get there. So, I guess what are we doing to really kind of highlight our parks and then diversify the use of the parks so that they're not solely for, the typical baseball leagues and soccer leagues, but there is other opportunities for either football or flag football or ultimate frisbee or pickleball, whatever the case may be.
So again, the information that we're gathering at this point with these requests will tell us where we stand right now. We have discussed repurposing a couple of areas that may be underutilized if they continue to be. I mean, we had to make sure that this was not just a seasonal thing or a COVID thing. So that's how now we will look at these, with the information coming in, we'll look at these and maybe repurpose some baseball fields. Maybe, if they're not something that we can use, we reconstruct or put in something for it to be a football field. So yes, we have heard exactly what you're saying, and we have discussed those amongst ourselves here as to see how can we move forward with the particular plan that we plan to get. They will also give us information, so we'll get an outside perspective as well to see how they feel we should move forward as well with the manpower that we have, how we can sustain that. So I think we're taking the baby steps at this point because it's not going to happen, like you said, right away. So we are looking at repurposing some of that. But the information that we gather with the request for the permit, so it's important for people that, want a request or have spoken to counselors about a request, go to the city's website, see how to request these fields, and request what you believe you're going to need for your particular organization. Because it's that information that we're going to use going forward to determine some of these improvements that the council is asking us to look into.
And if I could just jump in real quick here. So following the conversation we had at the committee meeting some weeks ago, we've started drafting a scope of work for some outside advisory group to help us with updating our open space and recreation plan, but being more intentional with the goals. So as you mentioned, the open space and recreation plan has some broad goals that are important, but it doesn't really narrow down on some objectives that we have to follow through on. So in the scope of work we're working through and developing, we would look at those broad goals, but then how do we actually fulfill those goals? How do we engage the community in understanding the needs and desires for what our parks should offer, and then going from there, developing some conceptual ideas of where that could be located, respecting the history of the parks, the neighborhoods, and everything else, and then following up with, okay, if we make these investments, what do the FTEs need to look like? What do the budgets need to look like? And really having that full comprehensive look rather than just kind of a broad open space recreation plan.
And I appreciate that, and I do want to, again, kind of repeat myself in terms of the fact that I recognize that the planning aspect is a very challenging aspect of this, but I think if it's done effectively, I don't expect it to take place within the next year. Maybe 2 years would be more of a realistic time period to get there. But I do want to just say that I think it's important for us and as a legislative body to make sure that we're involved in this, right? So just to be having this conversation and talking about it, and then when it comes time to go to these meetings for the open space and recreational plan, as a legislative body, we need to be there or have at least a representative during these conversations. Because what tends to happen, which is, and I'm not trying to offend anybody at the table, so if you read this plan, God bless you. But what tends to happen is once you get these open space recreation plan, it's almost like a checklist. You check the box off the checklist. Your to-do is done. So we've got this open space recreation plan. It sits on the shelf. We never refer to it again. You got the master plan. The master plan is a very similar document. But I think there's a lot of important information that goes into those plans that I think should be used at during any time of planning and budgeting, so that as a legislative body, we can go back and say, okay, we've got a budget before us, or you're requesting for some additional funds. How does that fit into a master plan? How does that fit into the open space plan? How does that fit into our capital plans? And it just allows us to make more informed decisions in terms of, allocating funds, especially if it's limited, right? Because at the end of the day, I think we're all hearing from our residents that everybody is struggling, and obviously taxes are increasing and things of that nature. So we've got to be cognizant of the fact that we have to be able to provide the services that they expect, but in an efficient manner. And I think sometimes we just need to really kind of make sure that the priorities are where they need to be, and the only way to do that is through proper planning. So I just want to make sure that we're doing that. I want to make sure that the park board's included in that, and it's a partnership, and it's not just the city council trying to go in one direction, the park director trying to go in a different direction, the board trying to go in another direction. I just want to make sure we're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, so we can make sure that this is moving forward. But more importantly, that we're providing the funding that's needed to maintain this, so that there's that sustainability aspect of it, so that we're not going back trying to do the catch-up that we're currently doing on all our facilities. So just don't want to lose sight of the fact that as we bring more facilities on board, that we also need to make sure that we're maintaining the ones that we currently have. So I'll look forward and wait for the budget. I know that's going to be coming down within the next couple of months, so we'll have further conversations about the funding for Parks and Recs. So with that, I yield.
If I may, one brief thing. In terms of making sure that the administration, specifically the Parks Department, knows about needs that may not be the ordinary run-of-the-mill needs, that we already know there's baseball and soccer and that sort of thing. But, pickleball, who would have thought 10 years ago that pickleball was a big thing? And I think one of the reasons why we may not always be aware of the things that as counselors you find out about from constituents is that the way in which people find their way through the city sort of almost looks like one of those old family circus cartoons where the kid would take the path through the yard. Some people go to a counselor, some people go to the mayor, some people go to the park board. If everyone tried to follow a same process, so it all gets funneled through the same thing.
They should go through the mayor's office.
That's not true. But I appreciate that confidence,
Hey, listen,
Councilor Fedem. I really, truly do.
Executive branch versus legislative. We just provide money.
If everyone, if you get a call from a group or a team or a league and they say, how do we do this? I think the answer from all of us, if I may, and I don't mean to tell anyone what to do, but it should be go through the park board, go through Ms. Smith, because that way there is a single point of contact that is recording where these needs are and is able to better meet them. Because I know there's folks that you're very aware of that may have actually never been before the park board, but found their way through by going through other channels. It's just not as effective.
Yeah.
So.
I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council seat 5, Council Pelletier.
Thank you. You look at everything that's coming, it looks very good, a little time consuming, a lot of money, get money from here and there and everywhere. But, you're gonna bring more people to Fall River, and nobody addressed this thing that in the parks, they play ball for 3 hours, 2 hours, comfort station, nothing? What do they do? I mean, you got all these people coming in, where do they go? Where do they go? They don't have enough trees. You need a couple of places to go. So, I mean, I never heard anybody say anything about it. You're in a neighborhood, and if they gotta go, I don't know, they probably go on the guy's yard or whatever the case may be. Many years ago, we had a few facilities, Lafayette Park, Kennedy Park, and we had the park department, the park cops. So we don't have them today. Well, here we go. We got all these parks to cover, like you. All the parks to cover, all the grass to cover. You got a big job, Now, the police department got their roots. I mean, I'm sure somewhere along the line, you're going to have trouble in one of the parks or two of the parks because there's always something happening. All the kids are not great kids. You got a few guys that there like to break the rules, break the windows, break somebody's bones, and that's it. Everybody's got a phone, and they'll call up right away. They'll call the police department, and they'll put them on the camera. Anything goes wrong, they get the video. But is there a plan besides saying, bring them all in and do what you want? What are you gonna use for a bathroom? You tell me.
That's an easy one. You should.
You know, you may think it's funny, but, you know, when you gotta go, you gotta go. Nobody addressed it.
Well, we are planting a lot of trees, so there's.
Yeah, it's good for the men, not good for the women.
So a couple of years, they'll be tall enough.
Okay.
Well, we no longer have the comfort stations in the parks. We
The
do
what?
not, have them. We have very few parks. And perhaps, I mean, you don't have to come to the park for 4 hours, you can come to, but when we discuss the premier facilities, when you're gonna pay for a premier facility, we would be able to possibly have that premier facility at a location. For example, Britland Park is probably right now our most premier facility that we have. It's a turf soccer field. It does have the availability. We can't leave them open, so they have a choice of, you'd have to have a fee, which would include bathrooms, lighting, a personnel to accommodate that. That's what we're talking about with the premier facility. It comes with all of those amenities. Regular visits to the park might not come with those amenities.
Well, you know, I think the big games and, you know, they get porta johns, and I think you guys should make them say, hey, you're coming in, you got a big crowd
We
coming.
do. The leagues do have porta johns.
Okay, well, you don't tell us, like Holy Ghost comes in, all the porta johns that you want, you know, and that's all well and good.
But, you know, to put porta johns here, there, and everywhere is not very attractive.
No, I ain't saying, but I'm just saying, you know, if I go play ball for 3 hours, I'd probably die. But if I gotta go to the toilet, I gotta go to the toilet, you know what I mean? And that's it, but,
The leagues do get porta johns, most
Yeah.
of them, yes.
all right, and then we won't, is there any, I heard that Kennedy Park would open up the facilities there, are they?
We open them for events. Right now, that's something that can be discussed. They cannot be left unattended. That's
So
the
you need-
issue with bathrooms. Bathrooms cannot be opened and left unattended.
Yeah.
It just is not a very good combination. They
Well-
need to be supervised, unfortunately.
And like I said, you know, we're spending money here, and we just don't see some of the problems that will arise, and that's it, you know. I go for everything you got here, it's good. It's good, it's just that don't have sometimes the right facilities. And I said enough on that topic, I yield.
Thank you, Counsel. Counsel in seat 8, Counsel Washington.
I just want to, thank you, Council President. I just want to piggyback Council in seat 3 with Davis Park. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you that people know about that park. I didn't even know about that park. I'm 41 years old, grew up in this city. Not until a year and a half ago that I moved up to the Meridian Street area that I was like, what is this mythical, magical, secret park? I actually had to call the mayor's office and say, am I allowed here? Because it's like Fort Knox. It's
Counselor,
like,
I guarantee you that once I permit out Davis Park,
oh, listen,
you will know
you
about.
have guys right here that are going to see you probably after this, but I mean, it's almost insulting to say that it's not permitted out people because the lots are so close to the neighbors. My brothers grew up playing at Pulaski Park softball. They were cracking windows because literally the softball house is here and the tenants are here. So, I mean, there's tons of land separating the houses from that field. So we definitely could use that field. It needs to be utilized better. And I will also say, I don't even know if it's up to code, the playground material up there. I took my kids up there once I found out I could go on there, that property that was gated. And like the swings are very old, from like 1982. The slide is like the one that you'll like get third-degree burns when you go down it. Like it was, I'm like, don't go down there. We'll be in the hospital. But so I would take a look at that. But it's a beautiful piece of property. Probably I think one of the most beautiful parks in the city. But it's locked. You can't, there's nowhere to park because you're like, do you park on the grass? Do you park on the street? So, and I didn't know. Now, in your defense, I am a South End girl. Grew up in the South End, so that's like a whole nother world when I was younger up at Meridian Street. But I think it's underutilized, and so I definitely say back with counselor. So I am another counselor who would like to see that opened up, and you know, more people would be able to use it. So with that, I yield, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Counsel in seat 7, Counsel Reposo.
I want to piggyback on Council Pelletier's point, and I know firsthand, and I've spoken to Nancy all too many times with Father Travassos Park, when we were fortunate enough to open Father Travassos there. In the first year, the splash pad was a bloody nightmare for my life, because I probably picked up more diapers from thrown over the fence than I've ever done in my lifetime, and I don't even have kids. The need for bathrooms is beyond just this idea of going to the corner and peeing in a bush. There's this literally, at Father Travassos, a school next door that I'm a principal of, and I've witnessed all too many times out the second floor window watching people use the bathroom on the tree. And there's 5 things wrong with that. We need to have a better plan. So I would like you, Nancy, if you could, when you have that conversation with the contractor and you're considering a field and all that, where bathrooms play a role in this. Because again, I know what Council Pelletier said, and he brings up a good point, but in all seriousness, it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And then, like we've talked about before, the man hours that require to support those bathrooms and make sure they're clean and they're open and closed and all that. Like, when we're talking about budget, those things need to be considered. Because we can have all these beautiful parks, but you don't have the basic necessities to use them correctly. There's just a problem with that. And again, I can witness it firsthand because I've done it. I've had to pick up those things, and it's just not ideal for anybody at all. The only thing I want to know, as of last year, how many permits did the park board give out, roughly?
30?
And mainly of what areas? 30 permits, what fields?
Maplewood, Kennedy, Britland, Travassos, Lafayette, Dumont. Those are multiple fields, as that's how you're going to reach that number. Off the top of my head, I would say the only ones that didn't get seasonal permits, Ruggles, because the softball disbanded, Lower Kennedy, because that disbanded.
Columbus?
Columbus is used by Maplewood, yes. Any particular park that you, because I would probably be able to let you know that way more than try to rattle them through my head.
That's fine. I was just curious of how many were permitted last year. That's all. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Nancy, I have a question. Britland Park, the lighting there, is that, how old is that lighting? Can it get updated? Because I heard it was very dark. It wasn't as strong as some of the other parks.
That is in the process. Mr. Bishop has a purchase order to do something there. So there is work that will be done there. He's waiting for a particular part. But there's 2 lights, 2 poles, and those 2 particular poles are slated to be repaired.
So there'll be adequate lighting once that's done.
According to Mr. Bishop, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Well, thank all of you. Councilor Posey, have your hand up?
Yeah, just so I'm curious. I know we discussed that maybe in a few months we could have another conversation about where we stand with some of these things that we've discussed. So I'm wondering if we can refer this back to my subcommittee for further discussions once we have some more facts, if that's an option.
If you want to make that in form of a motion, Councilor.
I'd like to have it referred back to the entire council, like today.
We can table it here, and we can just bring it up when you're
Yeah.
ready to come back. As it will.
Second.
Motion to table is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item is now tabled in finance. Thank you very much for coming down. We have a few transfers and appropriations. First one being the mayor and order transferring the sum of $1,300,000 to the stabilization fund from fiscal year '22 surplus revenue. Are there any questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to refer to full council, was it there already?
Second.
It is in full council already. Yeah. Just for discussion purposes. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
The next one is the mayor order transferring the sum of $366,069.80 to the OPEB fund from fiscal year '22 surplus funds. Any questions? None?
This for the,
These are all on the agenda for discussion purposes only.
motion to refer.
Second.
Second.
Motion first made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the third one is the mayor in order transferring the sum of $50,000 to the Health and Human Service Department expenses from the opioid settlement receipts stabilization fund.
Motion to refer.
Motion first made and second, all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have
Motion carries.
no idea.
Council President,
Yes, Council in seat 5, Council President?
I thought we were gonna try to get Kenny Pacheco out of here so he,
That's in full, that's in the city council meeting, this is finance.
all right, so
So we have to go to the final, for the very
so
city
how long
council
is he
meeting.
gotta wait? What do you figure?
It's up to you people, stop asking questions.
do
We
it
Let's
do it right now. He's my
can't do it
buddy.
now, we're not ready.
We gotta get him out of here to
I
do his
think,
work.
I'm gonna support it, so he doesn't have to stay as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
I'm looking to support it, so.
No.
When we start the city council meeting, we will take that out of order, Councilor.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome, thank you. The next is discussion, order appropriating $55,000 from the CPA undesignated funds, undesignated funds from the CPA open space outdoor recreation.
Motion to refer, council?
Motion first
Second.
made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn finance.
Motion to adjourn finance has been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Finance is now adjourned. You want to roll right into the regular council meeting, Councilor, or you want to take a 1 minute, 2 minute break, in case you need to use the restroom?
Oh,
Go for it.
It's an important thing to do.
go for it.
You look for a tree.
Unless you have to go to the
We'll
bathroom.
keep going, works for me.
Unless you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Allison, let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. It's a weird lip.
Say you're ready?
Yes.
Okay. City council committee will come to order, the clerk will call the roll.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion?
Here.
Kilby?
Here.
La Liberty? Here. Pelletier?
Yep.
Pereira?
Here.
Reposo?
Here.
Washington? Here. President Kamara?
Here. Will everyone in the council chamber please rise for a moment of silent prayer? Please remain standing for a salute to the flag. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit this meeting to any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and not deemed acknowledged and permissible. Madam Clerk?
The first item before you is a communication from the mayor and a request for the extension to submit the Quarter 2 budget report, which was objected to at our last meeting on January 24th. We would need a motion to lift this matter from the table.
So
Motion will be
moved.
to lift from the table, accept and place on file.
So moved.
Motion has been made, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Can we take
Item-
item 19 out of order, please?
Motion to take item 19 out of
Second.
order has been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 19, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Do we need Mr. Pacheco to come down?
You don't have to come down. You don't have to come down.
Can you?
You'll sit.
You're all set.
Took it out of order before.
You said it before.
Motion to take
Item number
15.
19 is the mayor's communication.
Motion to take item 15 out of order, please.
One at a time, Council. We're on item 19 right now.
Oh, right after, thank you.
Go ahead.
Item number 19 is a communication from the mayor and an order. The order states that the City of Fall River hereby authorizes the attached energy services agreement to be entered into between the City of Fall River Public Schools and Amoresco Incorporated.
Is there a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Need a roll call, Madam Clerk?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to take item 15 out of order, Mr.
Motion to take item number 15 out of order has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 15, please, Madam Clerk.
Item number 15 is a communication from the mayor, and we have two TIF agreements and a tie agreement. The first TIF agreement is for Bank 5 at 79 North Main Street. The second is a TIF agreement for 37 Park Street LLC at 37 Park Street. And the third is a tie agreement for Hyde Park Development LLC at 439 Pine Street.
Motion to
Motion
adopt.
to adopt. Second.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. Do we need a roll call on this, Madam Clerk, or not yet?
It's up to.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous is fine.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seat two opposed?
Mr. President?
Motion carries.
Mr. President, the reason I agreed to take item 15 out was because I know that Mr. Fiola became a grandparent for the second time yesterday to a bouncing 8-pound, 15-ounce baby boy.
Congratulations.
So congratulations to the Fiola family.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 2 is the FY '23 Quarter 2 Budget Report.
Refer to finance.
Motion referred to Committee on Finance has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3 is the mayor's request for the confirmation of the appointment of Michelle Hamilton as the city's veterans agent.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. Roll call.
Wouldn't it be motion to confirm?
Motion to confirm. The adoption would lead into confirmation vote.
Motion to confirm.
Do we need a roll call, Madam Clerk?
Only if you want one.
I thought we needed
No,
one in
no, it's
confirmation.
not required.
In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nope.
Motion carries.
Congratulations.
No.
Good for her. She'll be good.
Madam Clerk?
Item 4 is the mayor's request for the confirmation of the appointment of Daniel R. Lane as the administrative assistant to the Board of Assessors.
Motion to confirm.
Just want to clarify one thing for the record, that this is actually the assessor's position. It's not the assistant to the assessor, it's actually the assessor. Mr. Akins just made it clear to me.
No,
Okay.
So I just want to make sure everyone knows, we're not hiring a clerk, we're hiring.
It's well needed, for sure.
Okay. Is there a motion to confirm?
so moved.
Motion to confirm.
Motion confirmed has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Welcome to sir. Thank you very much.
Good, buddy.
Thanks. You need it, right?
Yeah.
My values. See what I put.
Madam Clerk?
Item 5 is the mayor's request for 2 appointments to the Council on Aging. The first is for Joan Lord, and the second for Mary E. Hargraves.
Motion to confirm.
Second.
Motion to confirm has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries as well.
Item 6 is the mayor's request for the confirmation of 2 reappointments to the Commission on Disability. One is for Daniel Robillard, and the second is for Dennis Pulselli.
Motion to
Motion to
confirm.
confirm
Motion
reappointments.
confirmed has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7 is the mayor's request for the reappointments of Ann Keene and John Erickson to the Redevelopment Authority.
Motion to confirm.
Motion confirmed has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8 is the mayor's request for the confirmation of the appointment of Michael D. Farias to the planning board.
Motion to confirm.
Second.
Motion to confirm has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 9 is the mayor's notification and order requesting the acceptance of a gift of a framed picture of President Abraham Lincoln with his Abraham Lincoln signature
Motion
for
to-
the Fall River
motion to accept.
Library.
Second.
Motion would be to adopt, has been made and seconded. On the motion, Council C3, Council
Yes,
Kilby?
really quickly, Mr. President, thank you. I would, this is quite a gift. So I would ask that we send this individual a letter on the part of the entire council thanking him. I haven't seen the picture, but that's quite a thing when, especially, I'm sure it's an original signature, to donate, to make a donation like that. So it's definitely a treasure. I yield.
That's a good point, Councilor, it really is. Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 10 is the mayor's request for the acceptance of grants. The first is the amount of $539,865 for the Mass EOPS to fund overtime costs for police officers in the uniform division. The second, the amount of $2,500 for Mass EOPS to fund overtime costs for firefighters to maintain optimal staffing levels in fire suppression units to be assigned as needed. The third is $60,500 for MOD to complete projects to improve accessibility in the Veteran Center. The fourth is $29,276 for Mass EOPS to purchase community support equipment. And the fifth, $9,458 for Mass EOPS to teach fire and life safety to children in schools and seniors at home.
Motion to adopt?
Is there a motion to adopt has been made by Council Kilby? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Council Reposo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion will carry.
Item 11 is a communication from the mayor and an order transferring the sum of $1,300,000 to the stabilization fund from the FY22 surplus revenue.
To adopt?
Motion to adopt has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 12 is a communication from the mayor and an order transferring the sum of $366,069.80 to the OPEB fund from the FY22 surplus revenue.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made
Second.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 13 is a communication from the mayor and an order transferring the sum of $50,000 to the Health and Human Services Department expenses from the opioid settlement receipt stabilization fund.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made. Is there a
Second.
second? And seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 14 is a communication from the mayor and an order appropriating $55,000 from the CPA undesignated fund for CPA open space outdoor recreation for ballpark lights at Maplewood Park.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Have the 5-year financial forecast that's been submitted.
Motion to refer to Committee on Finance.
Second?
Motion has been made
Second.
Second.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 17 is the notification from Mass DOR and the, of available funds of FY23 free cash certification.
To adopt, place on file?
Second.
Motion to adopt and place on file has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 18 is a communication from the mayor and Councilor Reposo's proposal for Bristol County ARPA funding in the amount of $173,000 for Fall River Artist Culture Coalition Artist Recovery Program.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded by Council Pelletier. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Council seat 6 opposed?
I just have questions on it. This is going through FRAC from what I read. We gave them $199,000 of ARPA money. Then we gave the chamber $670,000 worth of ARPA money. and now 173 for this Arts Coalition. And my understanding is this is to help artists establish the business and how to pay taxes and how to get a business. Isn't that something that the chamber has done for people who want to start a business, that the chamber comes in and does that? I mean, at this point, we would have given tourism and frac and arts $1.some million, over $1 million. I just, honestly, I was away and I came home, I wasn't feeling well. I read this yesterday and I really have some questions on it. So I would make a motion that this be tabled till I get some of my questions answered. So I make a motion to table.
Motion has been made to table. Is there a second?
We have a
Second.
motion on the floor to accept, to adopt.
Motion to table
Motion to table
takes
takes
precedence.
precedence, Counselor.
Second.
Motion to table has been made and second. No discussion on the motion to table. Roll call.
I don't know enough about it.
On the motion to table, Councilors Kadim?
No.
Dion?
Yes.
Kilby?
Yes.
La Liberty?
No.
Pelletier?
Yes.
Pereira?
Yes.
Reposo?
No.
Washington?
Yes.
And President Kamara.
Yes.
That matter is tabled.
Madam Clerk?
The Committee on Ordinances and Legislation, at a meeting held on January 31st, voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying proposed ordinance, accompanied by an emergency preamble, be passed through first reading, second reading, passed to be enrolled, and passed to be ordained, with Councilor La Liberty absent and not voting. This was a handicapped parking ordinance.
Motion to adopt emergency preamble?
Motion to adopt emergency
Second.
preamble has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Emergency preamble passes. Is there a motion
We
to
need a
adopt?
roll call on the emergency preamble.
Roll call. Sorry, Madam.
On the emergency preamble, Councilors Kadim?
Yes.
Dion?
Yes.
Kilby?
Yes.
La Liberty?
Yes.
Pelletier?
Yes.
Pereira?
Yes.
Reposo?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
President Kamara.
Yes.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Committee on Ordinances and Legislation, at a meeting held on January 31st, voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying proposed ordinance be passed through first reading as amended, with Councilor La Liberty absent and not voting. This is a miscellaneous traffic ordinance.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 22 is the order granting permission to Mass Electric for 5 new poles on Star Street and Eclipse Street.
Motion to approve.
Motion to adopt has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 23 is an order granting permission to Mass Electric for one new pole and 85 feet of underground conduit on High Street.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been
Second.
made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next, we have an order granting permission to Mass Electric for one new pole and 105 feet of underground conduit on Belmont Street.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made
Second.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We have 2 applications for auto repair shop license renewals.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Motion to adopt the application is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Have the police chief's report on licenses.
To adopt?
Second.
Motion to adopt police chief's report on license has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We have a number of claims.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Second.
Motion to refer to Corporation Council has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We have a thank you card from Colleen Taylor.
Accept and place on file.
Second.
Motion to accept and place on file has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 29 is a letter from Austin Fang regarding the creation of a zoning ordinance for short-term rentals.
Motion to refer to Ordinance Committee.
appropriate to refer to the planning board first?
Planning, we can.
Motion for the
So moved.
planning board has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is referred. Madam Clerk?
Item 30 is the Assistant Corporation Counsel's response to the recent open meeting law complaint filed by Patrick Higgins regarding January 3rd violation.
Motion accept and place on file would be appropriate.
Motion so made.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 31 is the Assistant Corporation Counsel's response to an open meeting law complaint filed by Patrick Higgins regarding the January 10th violation of the council.
Motion to accept, place on file.
Motion
Second.
accept and place on file has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 32 is a 2022 year-end report from the Commissioners of the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District.
Motion to accept, place on file.
Motion accept and place on file has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
We have a drain layer application.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the drainage
Second.
application has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Minutes of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Accept and place on file.
Second.
Motion accept and place on file has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to take items
Can we take
35 to
35 to
38 together.
38?
Second.
Motion to take items 35 to 38 has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve.
Madam,
Second.
please read them first, Madam Clerk, and then we'll.
We have minutes of the public hearing held on January 24th, the Committee on Finance held on January 24th, City Council held on January 24th, and the special meeting of the City Council held on January 31st.
Motion to approve has been made
Second.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Before we
That's all we
adjourn, I
have.
just have a quick question for the clerk. What is the Guinness Book World Record for most open law complaints, open public meeting law complaints? 'Cause I think Patrick Higgins has to have that by far, more than anyone else. Can we call Guinness Book of World Record to see what the open meeting law violation complaints proposed by one person is, just out of curiosity? And it's every meeting, it's just,
He'll file an open meeting law complaint on you.
yeah.
Yeah, you might just go right there.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Meeting is now over.